So what we've got Michael stuck on the side of the road in a Volkswagen bus, which is more than 50 years old. And wouldn't you know it, it's on Vancouver Island where all the lefties live, except for Michael and his wife, Ellie. And Michael, you had an offer of a free ticket for a multi-res conference. Do you want to just make the offer?
Yeah, some of my team couldn't go to the multi-family conference that's in Toronto this coming weekend, not in 2 days, the following weekend. I think it's the 27th. It's 2 days, all the different speakers and whatever. It's normally $600 a ticket. My team can't go. If you're on Bruce's team on this thing, you can have the ticket. Just email me if you have my email. If not, email Bruce and he'll forward it, and I'll get you the ticket.
So what I'm going to do, Michael, with your permission, is I'm just going to put your michael@affordableapartments.ca email in the chat box, okay?
Sure.
And so I'm going to put Michael's email in the chat box. Hang on a second. I'm going to move the chat box over so I can see what's going on. And Dustin said he's already going to the event, so you'll see Dustin at the event, Michael. And if anybody wants the $600 ticket for free, you just email michael@affordableapartments.ca, and it's yours. I guess it's the first one who mails you, right, Michael?
That's right.
All right, so get on it there, you guys. All right, so today we're really lucky to have Aaron on the call with us, along with Chris Hicks. Chris, wave hi. There's Chris and Nick Cripps. Hi, Nick, wave hi. So we've got Aaron and Chris and Nick, and we're going to hear from them in that order. Aaron first, and then Chris, and then Nick. And what we're going to talk about today is something that you probably, or you might not think is relevant to you as a real estate investor interested in multi-res or whatever you might be doing, commercial development, building duplexes, whatever. But I think it is highly relevant. And I've been encouraging Aaron Markel and his group to get into this business for some time. And I'm gonna, if there's enough time at the end after Aaron and Chris and Nick have spoken, I'll tell you more about what's in my mind. But these tiny homes that Small Living Company, which Aaron and his founders have put together, these tiny homes are completely off grid. So they're driven by solar power. They have composting toilets. And what is really cool about them is that they work in Canadian winters. My wife and I, we have a big family and we have lots of kids and lots of grandchildren. And we wanted to buy an RV for our backyard just because we got so many kids, we want to put them in the RV, at least some of them. And we went around. I mean, I'm not an RV guy, so I don't know much about them, but I know a little bit more about them now, in the sense that RVs are not made for Canadian winters. Below -3 or -4, you cannot use them. And apparently they're very, very difficult to winterize. But a tiny home like Small Living Company builds is good down to whatever temperature we do experience in Canadian winters. And you just roll them onto your site. So in my opinion, if you have a commercial place, an industrial building or an industrial development, you might roll a tiny home on it so you have somebody living there. The best way to provide security for any kind of endeavor, industrial, commercial, of course, any type of development, is to have somebody live on site. I've proven that over the years. I had a storage business called Blue Heron Storage, and we had actually a duplex in front where our manager lived on top, and the lower level was rented out. And in the 10 or 12 years I operated and maintained that, we had zero vandalism, graffiti, theft, zero, none. So I really like the idea of using these things. And if we could get them widely accepted across Canada and the United States, they're also at least part of the solution to affordable housing. On some of the properties I own, I do have some tiny homes already on my sites. And the people who, live in those tiny homes have more money than I do. And the reason they have more money than I do is they have more disposable income. They have their mortgage free by and large, and maybe they pay $500 or $550 a month in a parking fee, and that's it. They live for that. And so if you have a decent job and your partner has a decent job, and you live in a tiny home, right? You have a lot of disposable income. And you've all heard from me once or twice, I'm sure, that the motto of the tiny house movement is less house, more life. So I think there's a very, very wide use possible. But I'll tell you the real reason why I decided to invest in Hammond Hill is my wife, Dawn. She went to a presentation that Nick and Aaron gave at Brad Cartier as well. And she was so impressed with it, she said, Bruce, we're going to invest in this. And we did. And I'll tell you more about why the economics look so promising at the end, if we have time. So with all of that, Aaron, I'm going to make you the co-host so you can share your slides.
Yep.
And again, thank you for coming today.
Let me just get this. Can you see that okay, Bruce?
Yeah, just make it the full screen if you can.
I will. Is that better?
Not quite yet. Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk about is a little bit of the kind of how we've started building and how we ended up in the tiny home business, and kind of walk it back, go back about 3 or 4 years ago, where we were approached with a 62-acre parcel of land that is immediately adjacent to a golf course, the Hammond Golf Course. And we had an opportunity to, well, we got the land for nothing. We ended up into an interesting agreement, which we'll talk about a little bit further on. And Brad Cartier and I, you see on the right-hand side of the picture, we started looking at different options that we could do to produce some good ROI out of this property. And it was commercially zoned, which was fantastic for us because it was attached to the golf course. So we had all the same zoning the golf course had. And the first logical step, because we are kind of developers, was let's look at doing a development. And we looked at that hard and long, met with the city. They were lukewarm about the development concept and really were going to require us to come up with about $2 million worth of liquid cash before they'd even take a look at any of our plans. So we pivoted from that because $2 million is a lot of money. And we started looking at some other options in the zoning. And one of the options was an RV park / campground. So we started looking at the logistics and the financing behind how much it would cost to build a campground. And it's shockingly not that expensive. An RV site is different. It is very expensive to build, but a campground is actually not that expensive. So this is kind of the story of how we pivoted and pivoted and pivoted again. We started this project at the onset of COVID. So if you can imagine, it was about 35 degrees in the summer and the entire team was outside working with masks on. It was terrible. It was actually a very, very challenging environment. We'll talk a little bit about the land. So in this picture, you can see the backdrop of the golf course. We are the first campground to open in the province it's actually 12 years. It's a year old since I've written this. It is a little difficult to open campgrounds. Most places are looking to open RV parks. The rules are a little bit different, primarily because you have to get rid of black water. You have to deal with human waste. And those parameters are very difficult to initiate and open. Campgrounds are different. We met with the founding or some of the people from Camping Ontario, and they were amazed to know that we opened this campground in just under 9 months from start to finish. So we are based on exactly 62 acres. We have 2 man-made lakes. That's the first one you see there. Actually, the excavator's up there today, and we're expanding the lake. It's going to be about almost twice the size. We are next to the Hammond Golf Course. The brewery that I own is also located at the Hammond Golf Course. So by virtue of being the same land, we're also the only campground in Ontario that's licensed to sell our own beer. So it ends up being all these great vertically integrated businesses. We have right now 5 kilometers of man-made trails that is spread through the property. And what's neat about the property is we have about 10 of the 62 acres is provincially certified wetlands. Now, wetlands are very interesting ecosystems. They might be the most important ecosystem in our country. And you're not allowed to build permanent structures on wetlands. So what we did instead is we installed campgrounds, we raised them up, we built bridges and nature trails, and the province and all the people from the municipality actually love what we do so much that they offered us the adjacent 400 acres to build trails through their property as well. We are also on the Skidoo path, which makes it really interesting, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. a quick synopsis. We built a beer garden. So right now we're licensed to have 42 people within our beer garden. We're going to triple it this year to about 130. The beer is brewed a kilometer away. We have our own beer that's been designed with a logo for the property. It actually took 3rd place in Ontario in the cream ale category last year. So it's also an award-winning beer that we're able to sell up there. Tons of amenities: soccer, beach volleyball, kids playground. The adult playground is the beer garden, obviously. We do have 2 wedding venues. Many of you probably remember that I actually do the wedding. I'm a wedding officiant, so I do the weddings up there myself, which is interesting. We have 3 Mongolian yurts that were made by one family in Mongolia. They're amazing. We have, we're the first campground outside of the US to have these Jupes on the top corner here, the black and white Jupes. They're made by a bunch of people that left Tesla and SpaceX and came up with these really space age amazing structures. We have a bunch of pioneer homes. We work with a fair number of professors and design homes so that you would walk into them and live for the night as if you were living in the 1700s. We built all of our own furniture. We distressed the wood. We bought old materials. They're really an interesting option. We have 14 campsites. We have a couple of communal campsites. And what's really exciting is we're going to be the first tiny home community in Canada. And we'll get into that a bit more. That's what the Jupe looks like at night. They are amazing. They're all powered by solar power. And they have all these amazing LED lights, really comfortable beds. On the eco construction side, we've won a bunch of awards for what we've done. Every tree we cut down is accounted for and replanted. We don't waste anything. We bring down a tree. I bought myself a sawmill. I bought myself basically an entire logging operation. So as we drop a tree, the hardwood goes into the wood-fired pizza oven that I built and own, and into the new barbecue truck that we're about to put up there. The softwood is then sold as firewood. We make it into bridges, fences, all sort of planting options. The one thing you can't do, for those of you who have a lot of trees, like I know where Michael is in BC, unless you get a stamp, you're not allowed to use your wood for structural components. So decks, you can do it for decks, siding, furniture, all sorts of stuff, but you cannot use it for 2x4s and dimensional lumber building. Everything we do throughout the 62 acres, we look for areas where we're going to minimize our disruption on nature. So we built 10 campsites and cut down 1 tree to do that. And it's just a question. It takes a little bit longer, but it makes it a more unique experience. All of our nature trails have information plaques about what's happening in the forest and why mushrooms are important and how things degrade. And everything we built. So when we built this property, we had an agreement to purchase the land, but it wasn't finalized. Bruce has been pushing very hard to finalize that, and we do have a letter of intent done now. But when we built everything, we realized there could come a time when we'd have to pull up the hatch and move everything along. So everything that's built there can be moved. I could bring in trucks and move everything tomorrow. Oops, I went too fast. Oops. Do this again. Some of the things I think that made this very successful, I learned a lot about nature. We brought in a lot of experts. I have one of the women on my staff. She's a horticulturist and it specializes in trees. So you kind of have to learn what's around you, what impacts you, things like that. Just looking at the different obstacles, the city management piece here is really interesting. They fast-tracked our approval and licensing process. They were so happy with the project we brought them that we had our permits. Actually, I didn't even pull a permit for anything on this property, not one single permit, but they fast-tracked all of our licensing and gave us a license even when we were about 70% complete. Everything we've done up there, they love. The city management and city managers, they vacation up there, they do their meetings up there. And we've been very fortunate. I think when you bring to the city a project that they like and can get behind and promote, it's a very easy thing to do. I'm very fortunate up there right now. Today, there's probably 25 people working. It's a great work environment. They get to work outside. They get to get good tans. I think we get a lot of really committed people. I think everyone here knows that we film everything we do, and I do video filming sessions with all of the staff, and we highlight the items that they like about working on the hill. And we do a little series with all the different staff once a year, which I think is important to see what's important to them. Flexibility, right there, that's my superpower. I'm never rigid on anything I do, not a single thing. I think the real estate business absolutely requires you to be flexible. If you're rigid, I really believe you fail.
Especially these days, Aaron.
Yeah. If I can't get a black window, I pivot to white windows and paint them. If we can't build in one section, we find a different way to do it. And really understanding how to build and why things are built in certain ways allows you to do that. And I probably pivot 12 times a day. and it just, I pivot on my pivots. So
yeah.
What's coming this year that's really exciting, well, we're going to talk in the next couple slides about Small Living Village. So we have a company that builds tiny homes. It's called Small Living Company. We've just in the process of opening a company called Small Living Village. And that company will actually go to people that have land and build this model on their property. It's very exciting. We're in the middle of the beginning of a fundraise for it. And we have 5 different projects lined up. As you know, we were in Mexico last week, and I think we're very close on a deal on about 25 acres in just a few minutes outside of Cancun. Very low risk. The landowners bring in the land, all sorts of interesting stuff we can talk about offline on that. But our village at Hammond Hill will feature, we have plans right now, 4 phases that will have up to 100 off-grid tiny homes. We continue to develop our trail networks. The picture on the right, will be hosting, hopefully, the Canadian Federal Snowshoe Race Championship this year. Last year, we hosted the provincial championship, and I've never seen human beings run so fast in snowshoes. It's actually pretty interesting to be around. We are going to move to an entirely year-round operation, which means ice rinks on our lakes. We will have connected rinks. 3 weeks ago, we built a very large berm with leftover material. And so we built our own toboggan hill. We will be doing several festivals. We have a couple of beer festivals. We have some music festivals laid out. It's a great way to bring exposure, and festivals actually generate quite a bit of revenue. We will be adding an additional wedding venue. The one we currently have services about 40 people. We're going to go to one around the lake. I actually have a plan that I'm going to build a floating pontoon and marry the bride and groom on the lake with the entire wedding party kind of around us. I think that might be something interesting. We'll be hosting a bunch of beach volleyball tournaments. So we have up to 10 beach volleyball courts. We're going to add more campsites. And as I mentioned, the year-round operation is kind of our super weapon because we're on the Skidoo path. I actually think, and I've said this many times, that we'll be busier in the winter than we are in the summer. In the summer, there's lots of opportunity, a lot of options, but in the winter, all those RV parks close. People still love having fires. They still like cooking outside. We offer that. Just want to kind of go through the financials just to kind of see where we are. So we did start out with a land lease with an option to buy. We're in the process of going through a severance. I have to do a couple of small things and the land will be severed. Right now, our purchase agreement is actually $310,000. Which on 62 acres works out to $5,600 an acre. The next slide is actually Bruce's slide. He thinks it's significantly worth more than that. We've looked at a couple appraisals, and it looks like we probably can come in an appraisal of about $2 to $2.5 million, which is very, very exciting. The reason we were able to do this, the owner of the golf course, we gave him 10% ownership of the project. And he sees an increase every time we rent a unit. We kick back some money to him, so he was able to take the land at a little bit cheaper rate. Our revenues proposed this year will be about $400,000. We're hoping to get to about $750,000 in a couple of years. One of the really exciting things with this Small Living Village, this will be selling the homes themselves and putting them on a land lease, the way all RV parks work. So the early settlers, we call them, they'll be paying $350 a month. And then as we move forward, we'll be moving to $450 to $500 a month. So just based on the 50 sites that we have, we're revenue of about $20,000 a month. And that's not doing anything. That's just having these units there. And then you add in the revenue. Go ahead, Bruce.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out, I think some people on the call already know, that when Aaron talks about sites, these are not individual lots. These are land leases, obviously short-term being anything less than 21 years, less a day, down to, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. So there are no severances required. There's no subdivision plan required. What Aaron and Brad and Nick and Chris is involved as well. What these guys have done is something very simple. And as you heard what Aaron said, given the commercial tourism zoning, they were able to open the first phase in 9 months.
Yeah, we're halfway through buildings. We're almost done 7 homes, and I have pulled not a single permit. Like, I don't know if that resonates with what we're doing.
It does with me.
7 homes is roughly just shy of $1 million worth of construction. We're building pump houses, trails, lakes, and we have not pulled a single permit. This model is very exciting for people that have land. This is something to really seriously think about. And then we made the news in a bunch of areas. There's a couple of videos that are interesting. We're going to be featured this year through Ottawa Tourism. We're going to be one of 3 businesses that are featured. I did a video shoot with them that probably lasted 3 days, and that should be coming out in the next couple of days. One of the things that did happen, I didn't really touch on. We built during COVID. Last year, actually right around this time, within a couple of days, we were hit by that derecho storm. And for those of you who live in Ottawa, you know what that was. That storm for us in the east end of town was very severe. In the span of 5 minutes, we lost almost 5,000 trees. And when I say lost, I mean tumbled over, snapped in half, and have left us with a cleanup like I've never seen. It looked, I hate to use the term war zone, but that's what I equate it to. And the real kicker is insurance did not pay for the cleanup of a single tree. They did pay for, we lost 3 houses, we lost equipment, all that stuff was covered. But the tree removal, right now, that bill stands at just shy of $400,000. The insurance did not pay 1 single cent. So it was a severe blow, but we pivoted from a bad situation. And where the trees fell down is now the new tiny home development. It's been cleaned up, and we just pivoted into something that I think was in our plans anyway. It just made it better.
So can I ask a question, Aaron?
Of course.
How many acres did the storm clear for you? Was it 2 acres, 5 acres?
Just shy of 10 acres.
All right. So for those of you who know what grubbing is when you pay somebody to come onto your treed property and remove all the trees. And when I was much younger, Aaron, that was probably a $5,000 to $10,000 an acre cost. But the last time I had somebody come on, because equipment is more expensive today, labor is more expensive today, petrol is more expensive today, and diesel is outrageously expensive. It's now between $30,000 and $40,000 an acre, all right, to get somebody to come and knock down those trees. So the fact that you spent $400,000, right, and it's 10 acres, it is about right if you had somebody come on to the site and take out all of the grubbing it. And the other thing is that, knowing you, and you've already said it, you would use that material to create lumber and whatever else you need, correct?
Yeah, the real kicker for us was the trees are planted red pine. You'll see it in this picture here.
Yeah.
These are built for telephone poles, so they're not that valuable a tree. Okay. The running rate to remove these trees is $500 an hour for 2 pieces of equipment.
Wow. The
problem is the trees snapped at about 10 feet high. Right. So the best part of the tree was still in the ground, and it was such a mess that if they had gone through and actually farmed it when it was up, right, it's probably half the price. But they actually have to go through and clean it and farm it. Right. And then we have to follow behind. Not only that, if you've seen how these pieces of equipment work, they leave branches and stumps everywhere. Yeah. So it's not done.
Yeah, I understand.
It's only half started.
What did you do with the trees? So are you going to be able to use them in some way?
Yeah. So we found a couple of companies that came through and did some stuff for free, and we gave them the trees. The problem with this species of tree is it's good for about a year and a half. We're at the year. They're soon going to rot. So we were able to use some of it for lumber. We made bridges out of some of it. A lot of it will turn into firewood. We gave as much as we could away, but the same thing happened to us, happened to the entire community. So there was lumber everywhere. So that part wasn't excited, but we have a company coming up. They're going to actually take it. There's a pulp mill on the other side of the river. They're going to take a lot of it for pulp. So it won't get wasted. It's just been a monumental cleanup. What I will do is have Nick, he's been going up there. He's got a drone. So I'll have him send some links to you, Bruce. that'll show the park 2 years ago, and then kind of the linear translation of what it's looked like over the last month and a half, because he goes up every week, and when you have a lot of equipment, the progress is actually pretty striking.
All
So
right.
I'd like to,
Do you have another slide deck you wanted to go through?
yes, I have it open. Can you see it?
No, we still see the original one that you just showed.
Oh, let me go in and fix that. Sorry.
Close that one, and we'll hopefully we'll see the other one. Well, Aaron is doing that, you guys. I also lost a bunch of trees on my property, or one of my properties, actually a couple, and we were a little bit more fortunate. These were large white pines, you know, with probably 3 or 4 foot diameter. Sorry, diameter? No, yeah, diameter trees that were over 100 feet tall, and we turned them into lumber. We milled them, we dried them, kiln dried the wood, and you know, we now have pine flooring everywhere.
Can you see that okay now?
Beautiful.
So small living company started as actually an idea that kind of came from Bruce. When we were opening up Hammond Hill, we have a 2,000 square foot indoor showroom that the original concept was that we were going to run along the idea of the timeshare model. And we were going to use the timeshare funds to help fund the translation of Hammond Hill. The day after we opened the sales center, COVID hit and we were shut down. So we had to pivot again. And now we've kind of pivoted, and now we have a company that builds tiny homes as its primary focus, not as anything else. Like I said, we're 2,000 square foot indoor. We have 3 completely finished units. I'm actually sitting in one that we converted into a film studio. So, and it's great. It's super quiet and everyone leaves me alone. We have all of the materials that you can think of to design your tiny home. We have our own in-house designer. We worked very hard to secure an amazing partnership agreements with all of our suppliers. So they provide us all their samples, and we only use high-end quality finishes. We do have a sales team. Nick is actually head of sales. And in the office, you're here 3 days a week, Nick, something like that. And then, as I mentioned before, we have the small living village that we are in the process of launching about 2 years sooner than we thought due to the storm. It is located, the units themselves are located in Hammond Hill, but the showroom is located in the golf course. The golf course itself is 15,000 square feet, and we take up 2,000 square feet. So as you come into the main entrance to the golf course, you turn left, you're forced to walk into our showroom. And it's a great venue. We host weddings and events in it, so people are always walking around it. It gets lots and lots of visibility. What's really interesting, I put on the very bottom that the model of try it before you buy it. In this particular case, you could actually go up and spend the weekend in your tiny home before you purchase one from me, and I don't know anyone else that can offer that. All of our units are completely finished. They all have working power in them, so you can go on and off, turn off the lights. The one I'm in right now is a video room. What time do I have here? I don't know how much time. I'll skip the virtual tour. I'll send it to everyone. And we have a narrated version of it, and we do a lot of private tours as well. This is a small picture of Hammond Hill, the yellow outline from my cursor here. This is phase 1, 16 units, and phase 2 is an additional 34 units. The way we built the lots, they're very robust. The smallest lot is about 40 by 50. And we've built them all so that it can fit up to 2 tiny homes. So in theory, on these 100 lots, we could fit 100 homes. Everything is built off grid. Bruce earlier mentioned composting toilets. We're actually using incinerating toilets. I sent out a little slide yesterday. As of yesterday, we are the official installation and service partner for Ottawa and Gatineau, Quebec. And I'm sending 3 of my people down to get certified actually a week today. We do water reclamation. All the units themselves are built on custom trailer chassis that are built specifically for us. And the really interesting thing about when you build a house on a trailer, you do not need a building permit at all. You can build it anywhere you want. You can have a tiny bathroom. You can have weird stairs. It does not matter. The moment it goes on wheels, it translates from a house to an RV, and the regulations, to be honest, are ridiculously minimal. There are none. All of our units will have solar panels on the roof. Everything is built with an ecological construction in mind. I did talk about it before, but I went ahead and bought a $160,000 spray foam rig. So we're going to spray foam our floors, ceilings, and walls, so it'll be airtight. We'll be using heat pumps that'll provide heating down to -25. They'll be super efficient, get rid of any standing odor. It has an air exchanger in it. We're using on-demand hot water tanks. And the greatest thing about this model is it's totally scalable to any location. 2 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres, it doesn't matter. This model moves. What I think the keys to the successful construction are being part of the design process. And we talked about this a little bit last week or 2 weeks ago, understanding what the designer and people are trying to do and making sure that designers, they think pretty, like it's very important that you think practical as well, so that you have that balance. I put thinking outside of a large box because traditional construction is, 1,000, 1,200 square feet. Now you're talking about our units 128. So you have to fit a lot of things into a very small box. Your eco options are the only way this works. If we were using traditional toilets, I'd have permits through the wazoo. I'd be 2 years behind. That creative piece, the designer piece, the scalability, and the city cooperation is easy. They will get behind anything that's eco rated. These are the plans. Dustin, who's on this call, actually helped us with the design. The actual design of these plans, Shani, who's the young lady that works for me, her and her dad built a tiny house on their property. So she actually went through the process of building her own tiny home and living in it. So then I realized she's probably the most experienced person I have. And these are her plans that Dustin translated for me. So we have sold a bunch of units. Chris has been on, I think, to a couple of our sales seminars. So is Bruce. We didn't buy invitation only. We are closing. I put 67%. It might be a little bit lighter, but I think I'm about close there. Nick, would you nod yes or no? Perfect. So anything over 50% closing in this industry is phenomenal. If we get to 60, it's something we're really proud of. We have our grand reopening, the rebirth, starting June 3rd. So I'm a pretty busy guy these days. And we have deposits and commitments on 30 units. So we're really, really pleased about that. We are figuring we can build 4 to 6 units a month. I take my trailer deliveries in units of 6. So we kind of stack them all up, and I'll send some pictures of that. We stack them all side by side, and we just frame them and lift them, and then we decide them, and it's quite a production. And the average price right now is $125, but I do think we just raised the price. At 30 units is just shy of $4 million in 1 year of revenue. And we achieved those 30 sales in less than 30 days, Nick? Something like that. So that's $4 million in revenue if we don't sell any more units.
Aaron, Dave is wondering how you handle water. We know that you've got solar power. We know you've got a composting toilet. How do you handle the needs of the water needs?
So you can do it a couple of ways. In our case, we have a well. So we'll be installing water pipes 6 feet underground to get below the frost line. And we come up through a custom-made little chassis box that has heat trace on it, and it'll attach to the trailer. And it makes it very easy to do. We have no black water, but we still have to get rid of gray water. We'll run those to holding tanks. The holding tanks will be pumped out once a week. So they're really just, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Aaron. I apologize. But Dave, I do something very, very similar to what Aaron mentioned, but a little bit different as well. So water, as you guys know, and I'm sure, Dave, you know this, water is easy. You can run water, little pipes everywhere, below the frost line, bring them up like Aaron said, using heat trace tape so they don't freeze in the wintertime, and you can plug them in. So we do the same thing. Where we're different is we do not pump the gray water. Gray water is anything from your sink, from your shower, if you have a dishwasher, a washing machine, anything like that. It's obviously not black water. Black water is poop. You obviously that requires a whole different way of managing it. And Aaron mentioned that he's using Cinderella toilets, which incinerate the poop, and that's perfectly safe. But with gray water, what we're doing, Dave, is beside each one of our tiny homes that we have on our site, we dig a 6-foot pit, and we fill it with gravel, mulch, bark chips, and other things, and we run our gray water into that. It's like the cheap form of septic. It's not a septic system. It's a very, very inexpensive thing to do, and it allows the bacteria, if there is any bacteria in there, to to be digested, and it protects the land. So we've had a lot of success with that, Aaron, and it's a lot cheaper than forcing it to a settlement tank and then pumping it out. I'm just saying that we've had success with that.
Yeah. So
Okay, a quick question on that. Just if you're only putting in a sink and you have incinerating toilets, why do we need to have gray water? Because I'm just thinking, unless you have a shower, and it's for the shower only.
yes, they're full
No,
bathroom.
Okay.
in our case, Dave, the gray water doesn't contain any fecal matter, poop. So gray water comes from the sink, from the shower, from the dishwasher, from the washing machine if you have one. So that is gray water. In Quebec, as I understand it, there are no rules whatsoever. You can just take your gray water and just dump it on the grass, right? Because they don't consider it a pollutant. But in my case, I don't do that. We dig gray water pits. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it, but that's what we do, Dave.
They are mandated. Like if we were going to do that, we'd have to pull a permit for that. And the reason is technically the water that comes from your kitchen sink and your dishwasher is considered black water because of organic waste. Because you can have bacon grease, you can have a lot of things. So technically, if you go through the plumbing code, the water that comes out of your kitchen sink and your dishwasher is black. Everything else in your house is gray. In this case, it was just easier for us to run them to tanks because we absolve ourselves of any municipal bylaws and requirements.
Fair enough. No, I'm not saying you're wrong and I'm right, although usually I think I'm right. But I stand corrected then. But certainly in our case, we have been using gray water pits and we haven't pulled any permits, but maybe I shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah, don't say that loud. We're going to be very visible with 100 units. If there's 100 pits, someone will see them. And
I get that.
Big, yeah, that's the black water problem. And so anyhow, I'll pass it over to Chris. And Chris and I, or Chris, myself, and Nick, we met actually because of this project. One of the biggest challenges we had with these tiny homes, even at $110,000, was the financing piece and figuring out a way that we could finance them at an affordable rate so that we could sell more units. And kind of Chris was the missing link to figure this out. So we were fortunate to meet him, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris. I'll let Bruce share the screen or share the duties with you.
Yeah, I just did that. So Chris, you can share your screen, and
okay.
And we're really lucky to have Chris here. He works with Canadian Financial, and they are doing, Chris may correct me, but they're doing up to 90% loan to value financing for these tiny homes. So you only have to come up with 10%.
Correct. Yeah. So little background on me. I've been in the finance business for about 25 years now. I've worked primarily in the automotive space for many years. I took a little break in 2009 and got more into the power sports, marine, and RV space. And I was working with dealers across the country as a finance broker, financing clients on those type of assets. So, I'm very familiar with the RV space, and I'm also a very big fan of the tiny home movement. So it's been a nice fit for me for sure just on a personal basis. I started working with Canadian Financial Group. They are a North America-wide company. They have a ton of different verticals that they finance. So Patrick Labreche is the CEO of Canadian Financial Group. He started that company about 9 years ago, and he again has a lot of different verticals that he works with. I will where is it? So yeah, this is just one of the verticals that Canadian Financial works in. And we kind of just evolved, very similar to what Aaron talked about in terms of pivoting. That's been something that I've done all my life as well. And I think Patrick as well has kind of done that. He started off more in the home improvement space as far as providing financing for that. And then it just kind of grew, the tiny home aspect that really just came out of one particular builder that said, hey, you know, can you guys finance these? And my answer is always yes, let's see, and then we figure it out. And so that's what we did is, you know, I just had to enter it in, you know, so we have a portal that all dealers use. These get run through a dealership, and I don't run them through an RV dealership per se. Really, the reason for that is that anytime that we get an RV dealership involved, it's just going to complicate things. They just want to control the process too much. So I've got a dealership in Vancouver, and I've got the dealership in just outside of Ottawa that I'm working with now. And depending on where the client lives, I run them through there, and we're fortunate to have a few different banks that we can work with, and we just kind of work with whatever makes the most sense for the client. The banks do not have a program for tiny homes. Basically, these all go through as an RV loan. This is just another slide about Canadian Financial. It's kind of specific to the tiny homes in terms of what's possible with those. So up to 20-year amortization. They can be on owned or leased land. Again, with Hammond Hill, it's very specific at this point anyways to what we've been doing. So somebody comes in, they want a lot there, they sign their lease, they put their down payment down as far as the option on the lease, and then we get the order for the tiny home. They're all the same tiny home, they're all the same price. You know, it's really turnkey. We have nothing else like this that we're doing as far as Canadian Financial Group goes. We work with, I would say, pretty much every tiny home builder in Canada right now. I don't think there's any that we don't work with. Some of the bigger ones do have some alliances with RV dealerships, so we don't do much with them, but they will give us files that, you know, the dealership can't do for whatever reason. Just because my background in particular is I've done non-prime financing, so credit challenged financing for over 2 decades. So not to say that somebody that wants to buy a tiny home can have less than perfect credit. They really do have to have great credit. But I think outside the box more than your typical finance manager that's sitting in an RV store. You know, they would look at a file and go, okay, if it doesn't have an 810 beacon score and they're not putting down 20,000 and I'm not making, you know, X amount of profit, I'm going to put that one aside, and that client would just, you know, not get worked necessarily, right? Sometimes somebody will come along that is maybe a newer buyer. They just don't have a lot of credit built up, and then that's where I'll kind of work with them and see if I can get a co-signer or whatever. So everything runs through Canadian Financial Group, and then it comes to me. I look after all of Canada for anything automotive, RV, which tiny homes are included under, marine, and power sports. So these are done as a RV loan. So this is an example of a typical, you know, the ones that we've been doing recently. I know the price has gone up now, but the people that we've helped so far in the last couple months, they were looking at $119,900 as a purchase price plus tax. They would put 10% down. I had a couple that put down more, but generally, because of the way that this particular project is working, it's very different from what I do with all my other tiny home builders. All my other tiny home builders, it's just a private individual that's buying one house and they want to live in it. These are all being purchased by somebody that wants to do this as an investment and they want to make money. Okay, so it's different from that perspective. So they're not wanting to put down a ton of money in most cases. I did have one client that just, for whatever reason, he basically did a combination of a home equity line of credit, and then the rest of it we financed for them. So term is 60 to 84 months. The last few that I've done, we've gone with a 60-month term and a 180-month amortization. And the reason we've done that is because it's kind of a sweet spot for the bank. The last few we've done through RBC, and it's just a sweet spot for them where they'll give us the best possible rate, which right now is 7.99. If we were having this conversation a year ago, I would have said it was 4.99. That's how much it's gone up. That was a special rate that we had last summer for about 2 months, and anybody that took advantage of that is super happy right now. And then it jumped up to 6.99, and then it jumped up to as high as 8.99. So right now we've got 7.99. This is a specific example of 2 deals that we've done recently. Payments are 564.07 biweekly. The loan is open after 6 months. Somebody, if they want to say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to pay it off, but I want to dump money on next month, that's no problem. They can do that. There's no penalties to do that. So it's not like a mortgage where it's like, okay, you're only allowed to put down this much. Okay, you can put down as much as you want over time. We just asked that the client not pay it off within the first 6 months. If they did, then we, as a dealership that we ran it through, would just get charged back on the whole thing. And it just becomes an exercise in futility because it's a lot of work. It's, for me, from my perspective, it's similar to, you know, putting together a mortgage for somebody. It takes some time, right? There's a lot of paperwork. It's not, you know, we don't have to go and get it registered at a notary public or anything like that. Everything's done through e-signature. You know, it's very quick and easy from that perspective, but, you know, there's a fair bit of work that goes into it, just gathering income information from clients and that sort of thing. So that's a real example. I think Nick will probably talk more about the profit potential, but from my perspective, when I look at these numbers and then I look at what somebody's going to be renting these out for, it's about a $2,000 a month positive cash flow. I mean, if they don't rent it out that much, they still, I can't see how anybody wouldn't make at least $1,000 a month if they wanted to just rent it out less and stay at it at it more. You know, that seems to be the numbers that most people are working with. This is just another slide that just talks more about, you know, Canadian Financial Group. Canadian Financial Group does a lot of different things. So again, what else do we finance? The only reason I put this in here is because, I mean, there may be some people here that need some of these things, but also when I'm looking at a deal, sometimes I will actually access some of the other products that we finance to get them the money that they need to get the tiny home. Okay, so you know, we could refinance an auto. I just did a deal for a client who actually, it's interesting, he's in Nova Scotia, and he is buying an island off of Nova Scotia, or land on, I guess, acreage on an island, and he's putting up Kwanzaa huts, like basically these type of things that you have, Aaron. He's gonna put up like 3 or 4 of them, and so I was able to refinance a Nissan 370Z and a Ducati bike, and I got him $56,000 cash back, so he could go put his money down on his property, and so he's super excited. I just got docs back like literally 5 minutes ago as we're doing this on a client that is refinancing his 2022 RV, and he's pulling 30 grand out of that. We do park models financing now. We also do equipment, you know, we could do financing on bobcats, dump trailers, etc. Again, we refinance the above assets to raise capital. We recently got into Forex. So if anybody's doing some business down in the States, we have access to cheaper Forex exchange. And a variety of other funding verticals for small to medium-sized businesses and their clients.
Just for a moment, Chris, go back to the previous slide, if you don't mind, just for a sec.
How do I go back?
Yeah,
there?
So
yep.
For everybody who knows, Forex is foreign exchange, okay? Or if you don't. So you want foreign exchange, you can reach out to Chris. I did put Chris's contact information in the in the chat box. So if you're interested in reaching out for financing on any of the things that you see here, you can reach out to Chris. Can you expand a little bit on what park models are?
Yeah. So park models, it's funny because RBC, they kind of look at the small living company tiny homes as park models. They put them in that category. So, you know, really a park model is, to them, is something that is not designed to be towed around on a regular basis, right? So if it's just a straight travel trailer, it's a straight travel trailer. Could be a big travel trailer, but you know, they're towing it around. It's 42 feet long. They're towing it around with their big 1-ton pickup. But a park model is designed to just sit in one place. It may have wheels on it. It may not have wheels on it. It may have been delivered on wheels and the wheels were taken off and it's on blocks. So that's a park model. You know, the reason I kind of go, it's hard to say because some park models are more like modular homes, and I don't know exactly where RBC in particular, where they differentiate. You know, Patrick and I were talking the other day, and I said, you know, I can't give you a straight answer because it's going to take time for me to know what the bank, and they could change next month. They could go, you know what, we don't do these ones anymore because it's this amount of square footage. You know, it's hard to say, but at the end of the day, we put them into whatever category the bank wants to see. The reality is they don't have a drop down for tiny homes.
Yeah. So would you be able to finance modular homes, for example?
No, I would say no, not under this vertical. Where modular homes seem to fit is somebody, you know, they're going to live in it full time. It's a bigger unit.
Yeah.
You know, if it's on their owned land, that's a completely different ball of wax. I mean, they're probably going to access financing through, you know, as a mortgage. If it's on leased land, there are certain lenders that will finance those. But it wouldn't be through dealer track, which is what everything goes through for me. So, you know, we don't ever say no. We just have to basically take a look at it and then see, you know, through Canadian Financial Group, okay, where can we place this? You know, what's going to be the best fit for the client. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's always possible.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's a typical entrepreneur's answer. When somebody's willing to give you money, you say yes.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. You know,
I
because honestly, it could be a private lender. Like I've got access to mortgage brokers that have told me, hey, you bring me the right deal, and I'll do a modular home in a park, in a leased park. What's the right deal? Probably 35% down minimum. And that's completely doable for a lot of people because they're probably downsizing. They might be putting 60% down, right? So yeah, a lot of different variables. And I always tell that, you know, because there's a big team with CFG and they're always asking me for specific, and I just say, look, send us the deal and we'll try and find a way to make it work. You know, maybe we got to refinance his truck. We got to refinance his travel trailer,
Yeah.
you know, and we got to get him some private money, and we got to do a home equity line of credit. We put it all together and we make it work.
I got it. Last question then, Chris, for me anyway. And listen, don't let me hog the stage here, you guys. We got a chat box for a reason, right? Excuse me. So, Chris, quite a few of the people I coach in the States and in Canada now are into this contractor yards business, you know, where contractors need a yard to park their equipment, their RVs, their loaders, their dozers, their dumpers, whatever. And, you know, these contractor yards are anything from very small, 2,500 square feet, to half an acre or even an acre. And they rent these yards, and so be it. But many of them also want to buy these workshops or these storage units, or, you know, even sort of like old school portables, so that they can put some people in their contractor yard. So they'd have a contractor yards, and they'd have a sea can, and then they'd have but then they'd have an old portable, for example. Are those the kinds of things you could finance as well?
Again, Probably not through my vertical, but Canadian Financial Group, yes. And they do have access to funds down in the States. So basically North America wide. So again, it could be, depends on the client. It could be a lease. If it's a corporation, they say, okay, I will just lease them the trailers that they need. Or it could be a, like I say, a straight purchase. It's way different down in the States, as I'm sure you know. I'm sure it's tightened up a bit since a couple banks went out of business, but there's always lots of money down there, and they're a lot more creative than the banks in Canada, right? So, they'll do unsecured stuff up to 100 grand down there. It's not quite the same up here. So, but yes, we do all kinds of things. So, those are the things where it's just, hey, if you have a question and you wonder whether we can finance it, just reach out and we will see.
Thank you.
All right. This is just talking about our small business finance program. So we have a small business lease program and a small business finance program. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but a lot of people are looking. They have been stuck into as an incorporated company, as an owner of an incorporated company. They've been stuck into a personal finance on their vehicle. And they shouldn't have been. They should have actually either leased it or, in this case, done a finance deal under the corporation with themselves personally guaranteeing. The nice thing with this, it's actually through RBC, and it does not report to your personal credit bureau. So you don't tie up your personal debt servicing, but you get the write-off under your company. So we have that program as well. And then this is just my contact information. And if you can somehow capture the calendar there, invite, you can book a call with me. Any questions?
I'm looking in the chat box, and I get a big thumbs up from Woody, from Matt Woodworth. Just before we transition over to Nick, are there any questions for Chris? Don't be shy, you guys. You can unmute yourself and ask away, or put them in. If you are shy, just put them in the chat box. I'll read them out. You got 30 seconds.
I actually have a quick question, and I know we talked about this quickly, Chris. You had mentioned that you could actually help us finance part of the resort, right? I think you had mentioned there was some opportunity to help on the business side.
Yeah, that'd be a Patrick thing, but we could definitely hop on a call with him whenever you want.
Fantastic. I think that part's amazing. Really interesting stuff.
Well, gone. Thank you, Chris. That was a wonderful presentation. Really good. And you could be on the radio. You notice I didn't say on TV. But you could be on the radio. You have a great presentation, and it's very natural. It was really charming, really. I liked it.
Well, thanks, Bruce. If it's okay, guys, I'm going to sign off just because I have a 2.5-hour drive. I have to get to Prince Edward County here. And my dad's arriving tonight with my sister from Boston, and I have to make sure that everything's ready when they get there. So
before you go, we have to give you a round of applause. So we're going to do that. Well done. I mean, it really great stuff. It was fantastic, Chris. And I know it was kind of a rush, but it was a really, really good presentation. Do you mind if I kick you off? Then I'll stop your sharing of the screen.
Yeah.
And again, we got lots of clapping and stuff like that. So I'm really, really pleased. It was.
Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a great long weekend.
All right, you too. All right. So Nick, I made you the co-host as well. We're really lucky to have Nick here. I've worked with Nick for many years. He's a real estate broker. He is the head of sales at Hammond Small Living Company. And Nick is tired of hearing me say this, but he is a fabulous negotiator. So if he's representing you, that's a good thing. If he's representing somebody you're negotiating with, maybe not such a good thing, because he's a really, really tough but fair negotiator. And I really enjoy working with Nick. He's a very fair person and very fair-minded, as I said. All right, Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Bruce. Can you see that now? Or
Yeah. Just make it full screen. So go to the slideshow. Up to your left, I think.
At it.
There we go. It's coming through in a minute. Well, that we're waiting for that. Do you guys notice how much better my internet is? Oh, it didn't come through as a full screen. We converted from Rogers to Bell 5, and it has been a very tough slog. Bell 5 was supposed to be fiber optic, and as opposed to cable, it was supposed to be better, but it's been a slog for sure. But it is better this week than it was 2 weeks ago. All right. So do you think you can make it full screen?
It's not full screen there. Hang on a second.
No,
So
just
I got like
maybe
3
slideshow.
screens going on here. I don't know which one
icon
is
at the top
the
there that says, it'll say slideshow or something like that. And then top, just, you can see it there, just a little.
Yeah, no, it shows me full screen on one of my screens. Just bear with me here for a second.
Yes. Okay. Oh, you can't try again. So Chris Hicks is a real find, I think, Aaron and Nick. He's the real deal, I think. And something Nick told me this morning actually was that not one of the people who has applied through Canadian Financial for financing has been refused. So that's a pretty good track record, 100% so far.
And one of the interesting things on the builder side is the payment to me as the builder comes very quickly. It allows for the cash flow to make positive decisions. It's been very interesting.
Yeah, hit that little button there, see what happens. Start from beginning. I think that'll work. Oh,
You boot it out.
work. I can show the slides. Hang on a second.
No, you don't have the updated version there. Hang on. What's going
Yeah.
on?
Oh, did you update them?
Yeah, well, I just sent you a little
All right.
little
Well,
time
listen,
to get her
just,
pressed.
just
Hang on a second.
share your screen, and we'll just we'll tough it out. I'm sure everybody has better eyes than I do.
I'm
We'll just-
technologically challenged.
Yep.
I apologize.
Go to the first one.
All right.
That'll have to do.
Perfect.
Got it?
Yep,
Good enough.
that'll do.
Okay. So I do see some familiar names on here. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Nick Cripps. I've been a real estate broker for going on 15 years now. Currently with Royal LePage Performance Realty. My office is here on Bank Street, and just up the street from me is my mortgage office. I also hold my mortgage license with SJC Financial. And more recently, the director of sales with a small living company working with Brad and Aaron up in Hammond Hill. So just, I guess, Bruce mentioned, I've been working with him now, I think for close to 7 years.
Yeah, I think it's well now.
So before I met Bruce, it was mostly residential, working in my network, and actually the dog park is how I built my business. And then transitioned into more of a commercial kind of income perspective on real estate, if you will, which obviously if you're being coached by Bruce, that is everything that that he does. So we're in the process right now. This is sort of some exciting news. Very few people are privy to this, and I'd ask any realtors that may be on the call to keep this to yourself. This is just kind of in the works at the moment, but one thing that's become pretty obvious over the last few years specifically is that your kind of square box, if you will, of the real estate brokerage mindset is, we sell residential homes. Yes, we sell commercial real estate. There really isn't much wiggle room outside of that. Certainly when we're talking about things like tiny homes, to add to the services that are there. And the reason for that is that, as Chris was just saying, tiny homes from a technical perspective aren't actually real estate. The real estate part of the tiny home is the land leasing itself. But the sale of the tiny home is actually a retail purchase. And if you don't do it as a retail purchase, you can't get the financing on them. So we have to think about it a little bit differently. But from a brokerage perspective, we are embracing that. And that is something that's going to be released this summer. When we open up this brokerage, Terrace Real Estate and Business Brokerage is going to be its name, and it's a boutique brokerage for specialized services. So I've already mentioned
jump to the next slide, Nick.
Pardon me?
Can you jump to the next slide? We're still on the first one.
See it there?
No, just scroll down. We're still in the PowerPoint presentation. It isn't full screen yet.
Oh, All right, Bruce, I'll let you share it. You want to take it? Just so I can, you can drive.
I'll share the screen. Hang on a
I
second.
don't know why mine's not
It'll give me
cooperating.
something, it'll give me something to do. Hang on a second. I've got you here. Yeah. And I apologize if it's not the most up to date, Nick. So we'll just have to wing it. So hang on a second. So I'll just go to the full screen here. Can you see it, Nick?
Yep, that's perfect.
All right. I'll move this over too. All right. So this is slide number 2.
Yeah, so as I was saying, the first specialized service that this brokerage is going to focus on is the tiny home movement, and really bringing that into the forefront and giving agents who should be the ones that are selling these, to be honest with you, the access to do it, and giving them the tools as we're creating them to actually sell them through the real estate associations across Canada.
Nick, is that going to meet the Real Estate Council for Ontario rules?
So as I said, right now it does. It's not that it meets them or doesn't meet them. It's just it's not real estate. It's a retail product. It's a trailer, effectively, is how it's looked at. So they're not transacted through the real estate brokerage. The way that you can do it is put them on the land lease, and then you're selling the lease like you would sell a mobile home, as a prime example.
Okay.
So the second specialized service that we're really going to be focusing in on is, I call it the Principal Plus method. It's really a kind of a mindset, if you will, for anybody who's an investor or starting to get into the business, building a path for passive income or cash flow, and securing a retirement with the equity. So the idea is, you know, a lot of people will buy their principal residence, obviously where their family lives, and then they'll have, you know, 2 or 3 investment properties that are income producing, that produce a cash flow. Over time, your tenants are going to build into that, or build into the equity, and then by the time you get to your retirement age, that equity is there, tax-free, for you to take out as you need it, instead of doing reverse mortgages or anything else that that's being pitched to you. And again, from a real estate brokerage, from a mortgage brokerage angle, my mortgage brokerage does do these chip reverse mortgages. And I am so anti chip reverse mortgage. I can't. Yeah.
For those of you who are thinking, if you're 55 or older, which I am, those chip reverse mortgages are the worst invention ever, in my opinion. And so, I mean, maybe not the worst invention ever. I mean, there's some other really bad stuff out there, but it's from a financial point of view, it's a disaster.
Yeah, and people put themselves into a really bad spot. I mean, they'll start taking them out when they're 55, and they'll chip away at their equity for 10 years, and then they're 65 and they're still healthy and got lots of time ahead of them, and then they're forced to sell their house. So it's really not a good model for everybody. Some people sure it works, but I wouldn't do that.
Nick is 99 and she still runs her family.
Well, there you go. The other key piece on that specialized service, as the second bullet point there, that's the one that's not updated yet, is understanding the key difference between what's an asset and what's a liability. You know, and I don't know if Bruce has necessarily come around to this way of thinking yet, but a lot of people will think of their house as an asset, when really, unless you own it outright, it is a liability. It's costing you money to pay for it. And I don't know if that's quite in the Bruce line of teaching, or if he's come around to the Robert Kiyosaki way of thinking.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you asked that question. I actually have come around a fair piece. For example, in my house here, this is where my wife and I live. We have a suite in our lower level in our basement. It's a nice suite, you know, about 400 square feet, which we could rent these days for $1,600. So your house, your principal residence, if it has a suite, a garage apartment, a lower level apartment, maybe a coach house, could be an asset, a Robert Kiyosaki asset, because it is producing some income. In our case, Nick, our youngest son is here with us now. He broke up with his girlfriend and moved back with us. He said, "Dad, just for 3 months." Here we are 3 years later, he's still here. So our principal residence right now is a liability, a Robert Kiyosaki liability. But maybe one day Matthew will find another girlfriend and we can rent out the suite. It'll be at least somewhat of an asset.
Yeah, there you go. So number three is this is actually something that Bruce would help me with some coaching a while back, and I started to implement it in my own business outside of real estate sales. So I mean, anytime somebody says, "Oh, I'm a real estate agent" or "I'm a mortgage broker," immediately mindset goes to, well, they buy and sell real estate. In reality, I mean, I've been doing this for close to 15 years, as I mentioned, and most people will buy and sell a house, just a regular homeowner, once every 5 to 7 years is kind of the statistic. Real estate investors will buy three to five properties a year if they're really into the game. But a lot of them do it and don't really understand fully what they're doing. They're just kind of going at it and adding to their equity or their door count. But if you really break down their portfolios for them, they don't cash flow very well. And usually they're sitting somewhere around the 2.5 to 4% cap at the highest. When really what we want to see is anywhere between 5 and 7% as sort of a minimum to get their portfolios really cash flowing for them and paying themselves down. So what repo is real estate portfolio optimization. It's really just we're not here as a real estate agent per se. We're going to break down your portfolio. We're going to look at it with you. It's going to be nice and a nice spreadsheet, so it's very clear and concise. And we're going to determine whether it's worth keeping the property, animating the property, or just getting rid of the asset and creating more liquid cash to go out and purchase something that's going to cash flow better for you and that's going to give you a better cap rate. It's not always buy and hold is the purpose of this. It is sometimes that investment has reached its lifespan and it's not going to start producing any more cash for you, and it's probably going to be more advantageous to sell and use that capital somewhere else. So that's what repo is in a nutshell. And number 4, vertically integrated real estate and business brokerage. So it's a theme on this webinar. We've heard it from Aaron with Tiny Home and Hammond Hill and everything that's coming down that pipeline. And we heard it from Chris as well, where you're dealing with equipment rent, leasing, tiny home financing, and everything in between. Well, no different with the real estate business brokerage. A lot of people don't realize, again, that their REBA license, the license that we carry as realtors, is actually a real estate and business broker license. So we're allowed to transact in businesses as well as in real estate. So by having specialized agents who focus on this and have the ability to advise on the purchases of business, assuming leases that might come with it, assuming the financing that might come along with that business. Also being able to help with development and investing consulting when we're dealing with different lenders, when we're dealing with the city, working through pre-consultations, getting zoning changes, getting lot line adjustments, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of these topics aren't really covered by the 90% of realtors who sell homes. It's the 10% that really specialize in this area of investment real estate and more the business side of it that have a better understanding of how to navigate through these waters. And nobody's perfect, myself included, but having the resources and the network to be able to find the answers is what the difference is. When you're a residential realtor, chances are, and no knock against residential realtors, they do a very hard job and all the power to them, but you need to look for people that understand the steps so you don't get bogged down halfway through the process and lose your financing or whatever the case is. You can flip to the next slide there, Bruce. Is there any questions on the real estate brokerage side of things?
Not so far. I'm monitoring the chat box for you, Nick.
Okay.
I did put your contact information in the chat box. People can reach out to you for any of the services that you provide.
Yeah, that slide's a little bit zoomed in on my screen.
Dustin, you have one. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Dustin.
I'm excited to hear this because Bruce and I and Aaron were talking about some of this stuff in with my long-term goals, plans, my personal stuff. and I'm gonna bug Aaron tomorrow. I have a meeting with him to go through things, but I just wanted to say it's great to see someone doing something like this, because I think there's a huge gap in the real estate agent world for this stuff. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that is something that it's funny because I reached out to Bruce, I think it was around August last year, and I'm like, I have this idea in my mind. It was based off of something that was going on in my life last year, and it didn't work itself out. But I had this idea in my mind that I was trying to wrap my brain around, and I'm like, you can't charge commissions for these kind of things because it just doesn't make sense. But you need to be able to offer a service that's, you know what it's going to cost you. It's a 3-month term to start, and it's accessibility. It's basically coaching. But because we've done, hundreds of transactions in our careers, whereas even the experienced investor will do, like I said, 4 to 5 a year, but it won't span that many real estate deals, over time. You just don't see as many transactions.
I have a
And I left out the
client.
part where I managed an office. I managed a real estate office for 3 years. So, I mean, I was not only doing my own transactions, but I was doing every other agent's transactions in that office. So you learn where the pitfalls are, if you will. So just to Bruce, I can only see about half of that slide there. I don't know if you have it zoomed in or if that's on my screen.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. Can you see it better now?
Yeah, that's better.
All right, might not be better for everybody else, but anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
You can see it now. Go ahead.
So as Aaron was mentioning, there's been a lot of pivots in the Hammond Hill operation. We met I guess it was about 3 years ago on a totally different angle. It was a real estate meeting that we had. It was introduced through Bruce. This is a project that I invested in 2019. And as a chance would have it, they were starting the process with the hill, and I learned a lot of really tough lessons in this project. And commercially, it was a failure. Now, I mean, there's plenty of reasons, or as I say, more excuses that it did fail. But ultimately, the lessons that were taken out of it were valuable ones. And this will, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but eventually become part 2. I still do own this property. So this property is 187 acres. It's 4,000 feet of frontage. It's got currently it has 3 4-season homes on it. So it's got the original farmhouse, which was built in the 1890s, a 3-bedroom bungalow and a 1-bedroom bungalow. Both of those units have tenants in them currently, and then we have 3 cabins that are 3-season fishing cabins, and then 8 RV sites, which were when we purchased the property earmarked as tiny home sites. So, when I talk about commercial failures, so one of the first things that we didn't really understand at the time was the structure on a rural property. When you go to places like BDC as a prime example of a lender, they look at the structure, they look at how your shareholders are attached to the property, what percentages they hold, and how likely they are to actually be on the property and be active in the business. So if you have, in my case, 2 shareholders that are really just sugar daddies, for lack of a better term, they don't like that because they see that they can pull out at any time and leave you hanging. So that was one key thing. The other key thing was nobody at the time was offering financing on tiny homes. So if we wanted to do that, we had to leverage ourselves in order to do that. And it just wasn't possible because, even at the deal that we give right now, which is relatively inexpensive when you compare it to a lot of our competitors for tiny homes, it's about half the price. It's still significantly, when you're talking about 8 of them, that's still $1 million that you have to get on something that's not going to be secured to a property. It's on wheels. So they're just not even going to look at it. They're not even going to consider it. On the operational side of the business, they want somebody on the site that's going to be running it, or it's got to be close to home, like it's close to where you can see it on a regular basis. And we've already talked about it. Again, technically, tiny homes aren't aren't actual homes. You can't mortgage them. So that's another piece that they look at. So anyways, all of these lessons learned were, it's a very capital intensive proposition to start to build a tiny home village. And in learning those lessons 5 years ago, when I met Brad and Aaron at a small living company, I specifically went and got my mortgage license for the purpose of finding a way to get these financed. And that's how I found Chris and Canadian Financial. So again, lots of lessons learned there, but it has created the success of the way that we're able to sell these now with Hammond Hill and with Small Living Company, and being able to produce them on a level that, as Chris mentioned, I mean, it's not being done anywhere else right now. We're building 7 right now. Aaron is in the process of building those 7, and we're going to be delivering those in the next few weeks. So no one can really do that.
I just stopped sharing the screen just for a minute, Nick, because I just want to give Nick some props. He was, he was Eeyore there for a couple of minutes. If you guys know who Eeyore is. Winnie the Pooh, the donkey, was always down on himself. I'm going to give Nick some props here. He put in a tremendous effort on this, and the rest of the story is not yet told. This is a place that has 4,000 frontage feet on the second best fishing lake in Ontario. It's near Eganville, so not very far from Ottawa, maybe an hour and 20 minutes away. Not that far from Toronto either. And I think Aaron may agree, and Brad may agree. Certainly, I am coaching everybody. I think this is going to be, Hammond Hill 2 or Hammond Hill 3. So there is a move afoot by Aaron and Brad and the group to spread out Hammond Hill. They're going to call it Small Living Village as opposed to Hammond Hill, but it'll be everywhere. The model actually was first started by Parkbridge about 25 years ago when they were doing these modular home or cottage parks. And the model that Brad and Aaron and Nick as well have adopted. So Nick, even though this was a failure, like I said, the story isn't finally written yet, and I think you're going to turn it around, and it'll be fairly soon.
I have every confidence. And to go to the point on that slide, it really is who you work with. When you have a group of people, as we do, that I'm lucky enough to work with, that there are entrepreneurs that don't really hear no. I mean, we hear it, but it's just an obstacle to overcome, and it's actually very refreshing. So I'm very lucky and very honored to be working with the group that I'm working with, and certainly look forward to the future. This one is just
Nick, can you sum this up in a minute? Because I
very quickly,
I've got 5 minutes left. I would just like to show one slide of my own.
Yeah, and this is really quick because Chris already hit on it. So there is another option for the businesses on this that want to invest into a place like Hammond Hill. Maybe you want to have 5 or 6 units, not just 1 or 2. And that's through commercial leasing. So we work with a commercial company. You have to be a business. It can be a sole proprietorship, doesn't have to be a corporation. But they will allow you to purchase these with your business and lease it back to yourself. So you're leasing it back, and their interest rates are a little bit more, but it's not on your personal credit. And unlike with Canadian Financial, you don't have to secure it personally either. So it is a bit of a game changer. We're just learning about this right now because I only really spoke to this company about 5 days ago, but this allows people to buy more and buy across the country as well.
Matt Woodworth, you're on the call. Woody, you're on the call here. You heard what Nick just said about commercial leasing for your business. So everybody, in a few weeks from now, a couple of weeks from now, I think, Matt Woodworth and Michelle Woodworth, Woody, will be presenting something that is an absolutely extraordinary business model. And he'll tell you all about it. I won't trump him and spill the beans, but it's coming up in a couple of weeks. I want you to take note of this, Woody. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a moment, and I've got 4 minutes. I just wanted to present one slide, if I can. And I didn't remember until Aaron told me, and let me share the slide. Hang on a second, you guys. Until Aaron told me something that, you know, I had forgotten. And I'll ask you guys if you can see this slide. So Aaron, can you see this slide okay?
Yes.
All right. So I'll just blow it up. Can you still see it all right?
Yeah.
All right. So what happened was some time ago now, I went to have lunch with Aaron and his beautiful wife, Candace. My wife, Dawn, who's on the screen here, came with us. We had a nice lunch. I think it was at the Hammond golf course.
Boston Pizza.
Oh, whatever. What do I know? So anyway, we were going to go to, my wife and I were going to go to the presentation about Hammond Hill Small Living Company, and now Small Living Village. And I said to Aaron, which I had forgotten about until he reminded me today, that you know, I have so many investments going on and so many projects going on. I said, Aaron, I'm just here to support you as your coach, as your friend, and the whole team. And we're not going to make an investment in Hammond Hill, but we are here to support you. Then we went to the presentation, which Brad Cartier, Aaron Markel, and Nick gave. And afterwards, my wife turns to me in her nice but firm way and says, we are investing in this. And for my wife to do that was really something. So she has good instincts and good judgment, I think. And then I said, oh, okay, honey. And I went back to my computer, and this is what I did. I put it on a spreadsheet. So Dawn was talking about her instinct that this was a very good investment. And I said, oh, okay, we'll do it. So we bought, or we leased Site 9, and we bought two, a small living company, tiny homes. And I just want to show you what an incredible investment it is. Now, Aaron and Brad and Nick and the companies are doing fine. But what they have done is they've created an opportunity for investors or buyers to do really well too, which I think is incredible. And for those of you who do business in the States, there's often a mentality of big win for me and total loss for you. There's no such thing, at least in many parts of the States and the business community, for a win-win. Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, it's more about maybe big win for Aaron, little win for you, but they're trying to create a win-win situation. Well, this is truly a win-win, big win for both. So here's what I did. We got in at the time when the land lease was $350 a month for Site 9. Today it would be $400 or $500 because they're having a lot of success. But even at $350, assuming that each small living company unit is about 120 grand plus HST, you put down a 10% deposit, you get some financing from Canadian Financial at 90%. Maybe the interest rate is 8 or 9%. I don't really know. Maybe it's 7%, but it's in that range. You finance it over a period of time. And then you can just have those units that you can enjoy yourself with your family, or you can put them in the rental pool, because Brad Cartier, for those of you who know him, is one of Canada's leading experts in the short-term rental business. He works for Hostfully, based, I think, in Texas, and these guys are an unbelievable machine. They put your listings, if you will, on Airbnb, Vacation Rental by Owner, Vrbo, Booking.com, and probably a dozen other sites. And so if they have an average daily rental of $200, and they have a 2/3 occupancy rate, and you deduct about 20% for operating expenses and another 14% for different types of operating expenses. If you have one small living company unit on your property, after paying for everything, including your financing, you're making about 27 grand a year. That's fantastic. And if you have two units on Site 9, for us, you're making like almost 60 grand. That's ridiculous. I mean, don't feel sorry for Aaron and Brad and Nick and everybody else. They're doing fine too. But you, as the investor or the owner of these sites or leasing and the units, and your cap rate is ridiculous. It's 33%. So maybe my numbers are too robust. And so I did another case where I dropped the average daily rental to $150 and the occupancy rate over the year to just 50%. You're still doing very, very well. You're still making about $14,000 if you have one unit, and you're making more than double of that if you have two units. These are approximate numbers, but you're still doing very well. But what I found really interesting, and I got to wrap up because I'm now a minute over time. What I found really interesting is the implications for your personal balance sheet. For those of you who have done some coaching with me, it's very important to keep a personal balance sheet. It's just a spreadsheet that says, here's the stuff I own. This is what I think it's worth, and this is the debt I have against it, and here's whatever my equity is. It's still one of the best ways to keep track of everything you own. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I find accounting statements pretty hard to understand. I do. I'm just a simple engineer. So I just have a personal balance sheet which has a bunch of assets that we own, what I think it's worth, and a bunch of debt, and whatever is left over is hopefully a positive number. But look at this. By buying Site 9, my wife was just, you know, thinking out loud and her instincts. You know, if you have just with the lower cap rates, you know, 21% instead of 30%, you're still getting, with one small living company trailer on your site, you're still getting a $300,000 boost to your personal balance sheet. That's what that income is worth when you value it at 8%. And if you have two, you've got a ridiculous improvement in your personal balance sheet of almost $700,000. It's incredible. So that's one of the reasons why I mean, I agreed with Dawn right away, but I wanted to prove to myself that it's not a bad investment. And Nick, what we're hoping to do, Aaron and I and Brad and you as well, is we're hoping to do another one on the property that I bought from Michael out on Lasqueti Island. And we would have one, hopefully, a small living company village in Cancun, which is fabulous, Lasqueti Island, which is beautiful off the coast of Vancouver Island, one in near Eganville on your property, and I don't know, there's probably 100 other sites you could probably move on to in the next decade, Aaron.
And the interesting part from us, we have 100 acres in Tulum that we're about to close on as well. But the interesting component is, as the parks grow, the investors get to follow. So you can own a property in Cancun, you can own one in Eganville, you can be in BC. And we've left the model very similar. The goal being to the first 20 or 30 people that join us just kind of bowling ball their way down the lane and just kind of
stay. That's fantastic. And what I love about it, with all due respect, is I don't have to do any work. If I do one more thing, my head will pop off. As I said to you when we started this an hour and a half ago, Aaron, and you guys will be looking at the headless horseman, only without the horse. So listen, everybody, I really, really appreciate all the hard work that you did, Aaron, and you do, and you too, Nick. And of course, I'm saying thank you to Chris and everybody. We'll see you next week, okay? And stay tuned. We also will do this on replay, as we do for the people who couldn't make it today. There were about 20 people who are absent today, but that's okay. They'll see the replay. Thanks again for everything, you guys.
Thank you.